Now we need to say at this point, because we're going to get 1,000 objections, right?
Well, of course.
There are various ways that atheists attempt to get around this issue. And if you refer to Mitch Stokes' books, he deals with most of these, actually the most important ones, right? And so we won't take the time to go into that, but I refer you to his book was...
How to be an atheist.
How to be an atheist, right? Yeah. So go take a look at that, and even look at our series of walking through that book, and he'll deal with these other objections that they have. But the basic idea here is that a morally perfect God is the only adequate standard for the system of scoring, right? That's the basic idea. And if we're going to make sense of evil.
Right. And so, ironically, then, evil does not prove atheism. Right. In fact, it proves just the opposite. There can only be a problem of evil if God exists, right? So to say this isn't how it should be, should, oughts and shoulds, those are the warning signals that Nancy Pearcey talks about too. Oughts and shoulds, can't have those in a subjective universe. So this is the way that it shouldn't be. So that means that there's a way that it should be. Well, how do we get to the should? Is there other shoulds? Is there other oughts? Is there? And then who provided for those? Does the universe just pop them into existence? Can they pop out of existence? Another thing that Mitch Stokes talked about too. Yeah. So see how all these books are working together. Weird. So since God must exist to make evil intelligible, right? To understand even what evil is. God must exist. Evil cannot be evidence against God. Right. A complaint commits infanticide. Now, you could probably say, I hate God for those things, right? That's what you do. But to say he doesn't exist because of them, that doesn't follow.
Right. Good, yeah. And so using infanticide, we see the notion of morality with its corresponding concept of evil rest upon the prior foundation of God's existence, right? So you got to have that foundation, that's the parent, in order to even come up with a standard to determine good or evil. And if you don't have the foundation, then you kill off the child of the notion of what is good and evil. God exists seems to be necessary in order for any conversation about evil to be coherent. Thus, it can never be used to refute God, the problem of evil he suggests here, because without God, the objection would have no meaning, right? Because there is no standard, so there is no meaning of right and wrong in this situation. So how could you say anything is evil? Right? What do you mean by evil?
Right. So that's where the second proposition gets killed by the initial one.
So the objection here, and I want you to deal with this because he deals with this right here, is so are you saying then that atheists can't behave good?
Right. What do you mean by that? Right. So sometimes, and I really only heard this from the other side. So I've never actually heard a Christian espouse this, but I'm sure it's happened, right? You probably think of someone that's like, I would never trust an atheist to be in office because they cannot be moral.
Yeah.
Well, okay, if you define, if you can say that morality is subjective and you talk about that, okay, I may be able to buy that logic. But what this does not mean is it doesn't mean that an atheist cannot behave morally. Right. The issue is whether he can make sense of morality in the universe, whether there's a grounding for it. Right. And so this isn't to say that.
So this is a foundational issue. This is this isn't a behavioral issue. This is where do I get the foundation for it, right?
So he says here, gravity still works even when people have no explanation for why it works, right? Even before we came up with the concept of gravity, it still pertained to us. and again, the Bible talks about the law being written on our heart. Why do we act morally? Why do we have a sense of a concept of right and wrong or of justice or wanting to find improvement? Well, it's not just for the sake of doing it. It's because it's been bestowed upon us as image bearers of God that we do those things. Yeah. And so it doesn't mean that atheists, those who don't believe in God, can't make sense. In fact,
can't act morally.
Right, can't act morally. Yeah. In fact, the Christian worldview explains that. So it has explanatory power. Yeah. And so if we have a kind of a universal sense of right and wrong, atheist doesn't really have that claim. It has no grounding. That's where the issue of the grounding problem comes into play. Atheism is a physicalist system that does not have the resource to explain a universe thick with non-physical things like moral obligations, numbers, the laws of logic. That our words produce claims. You're safe, or I now pronounce you man and wife. Okay, those are non-physical things. That's where kind of the scientism comes
created
in.
a marriage out of nothing.
Yeah.
Poof! Right.
Look at that. The Big Bang.